John, how can credit unions operationally, so this is kind of your expertise, how can a credit union operationally prepare for working with members and their digital assets?
Yeah, I want to tie this answer into some great comments that Travis just made about Web3, because when I'm talking about operationally preparing, or strategically and operationally preparing, I am thinking about preparing for that world that Travis was just describing. So to me, the defining characteristic of Web3, which everybody should be aware, is that there's not a unanimous consensus of what Web3 is. If you go read about Web3, you'll find all kinds of differing opinions. But when I look at all these differing opinions, I see a couple unifying factors that drive it right back to financial institution operations. One defining characteristic of Web3 in my mind is that money will become part of the internet, not something you use on the internet. You won't use your debit card to use your electronic dollars on the internet. The internet will invent, evolve, create, use a native currency or multiple native currencies. So the electronic dollar and all the other fiat currencies of the world, they are not internet native currencies. They're currencies that are electronic and centralized and file-based and batch-based. And we've found kind of clunky ways to tie them into the internet that creates a lot of risk, a lot of exposure, a lot of inefficiency. So Web3 will create a world where money and the internet fuse. Just like video and the internet fused, music and the internet fused, travel and the internet fused, so on and so forth. Talking to your family and the internet fused. So money and the internet will fuse. If that's a defining characteristic of Web3 in my mind. Another aspect of Web3 will be that people will have more control over their data, as opposed to large organizations having lots of the sole control over their data. So that's going to create two operational opportunities and strategic opportunities for local institutions. I believe that I'm very bullish on a reality that we are headed toward full steam, where you're going to have like two split worlds people choose to live in. They'll either have to use hyper-centralized currency in the form of a direct-to-Fed digital wallet, where their bank account is basically with some government agency in one way or another, or they'll have a relationship with private institutions like credit unions and local banks, and they'll want to protect their data, vault their data, store their digital money in these local institutions. And that's the value these local institutions are going to bring to them. If we think about money and the internet fusing and people having more control over their data, they're not going to run a server in their house. I mean, some will, radicals like Travis and I might, but most people will not want to run a server in their house to store their internet money and their internet data and their internet digital wealth. They're going to want to partner with a local institution who has redundancies, operations, risk mitigations, insurance, et cetera, to process this stuff. So if you want to prepare your operation for Web3 and for digital assets and a world where EFT, NACHA, ACH, and everything else is the checkbooks of tomorrow, and money is one with the internet, you got to start by educating your internal management team today. Unfortunately, the vast majority of credit union management teams are underinformed on all the terminology, logistics, technology, operational movement of this data, basic concepts of why digital assets have value, how the global networks of these technologies function. And so that's where we really focus our time and energy at the start, is having a conversation with an FI about just basic literacy inside their own operation. Giving them the definitions, the language, the tools, the framework to talk about this stuff in ways other than, the very banal talking points that come from CNN and Fox News about how this stuff is a fad and it's too dangerous to touch. Beyond basic internal education, like a half-day seminar or whatever to get a management team educated, start building strategies for how you're going to control and store and use this data in your institution so that you can offer value to folks locally. I really believe we're headed toward a world where either this data will be stored locally or it will be stored in a hyper-centralized, probably authoritarian type, digital regime. And I know consumers are going to demand, at least US consumers, will favor the decentralized democratic method for storing their data. But that requires institutions to be strategically looking at all their operational technologies right now. Are they primarily on a technology stack that's geared towards ACH, NACHA, EFT, and checks? And if so, they're in trouble. So you got to map out that strategy and get educated and literate internally. And we love doing that stuff, slogging through that swamp with our clients.